Denise Rush.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to take a call on this part of the bill, part 2, miscellaneous matters, but actually what I want to address my comments to is clause 18, which amends section 371. Now, sir, I have a supplementary order paper which essentially deletes this clause, because this is the clause, as the previous speaker has explained, this is the clause that deals and allows for commission-based payment for venues. And I'd be interested in a response from the Minister, I think, about why this clause is here, given there has been such strong opposition to it, for so many years, and it was explicitly prohibited in previous legislation. I'm really keen to know why there has been a change and allowing commission-based payments is going to be part of this legislation, when really it didn't come out of anywhere or any evidence. The arguments that we heard from the Minister at the time that this bill was introduced, sir, was around the fact that the payment for venues was complicated. And, without a doubt, the payment for venues, it is very complicated. There is a very kind of strict equation, but it is for venue operators receiving payment for having poker machines on their premises. They be paid actual, reasonable and necessary costs, and that's the exact wording: actual, reasonable and necessary costs. And yes, even though it is complicated, there has been an enormous amount of work by the Department of Internal Affairs working with venue operators over several years to try and ensure that they were able to claim what they were meant to claim for. Because, in the past there had been other rorts perpetrated by venue operators for things like claiming for wages and claiming for the premise upgrades, which were beyond and above reasonable, and it's where we come to reasonable. And there had actually been court cases about that. So the complexities of the regulations have been the subject of much discussion and much education, actually, with the Department of Internal Affairs, with the venue operators. And in fact, in 2009, they began working with gambling societies on standardising venue cost schedules, and they encouraged gambling societies and the hosts, the venue operators, to participate in what they called the resubmission project. And that was to get venues to put in their submissions so that they could work with them to make sure that they were getting right. And they did a report, the Department of Internal Affairs did a report on this in September 2013. And that was, so that's after 4 years of work. So they reported on the project. It was called the Venue Cost Resubmissions, and it included a series of recommendations about the calculation for venue payments, including for a full review and to actually initially adjust some of the limits to cover where there have been increases in inflation and, for example, wages. So this is not unreasonable. This is good practice. This is the regulator operating in a very responsible manner with the industry, and the industry responding in a very responsible manner. But in their report with these recommendations, nowhere did it recommend introducing a commission-based payment system for venues. So my question to the Minister is, where did this come from? Who put this forward? Because it didn't come from the Department of Internal Affairs. And if we consider that the submissions that supported this part of the bill the submissions that supported this part, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Denise Roche.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the only submissions that supported this part of the bill were actually from the industry, from venue operators themselves and from gambling societies. And in fact, the oppositions to this part of the bill came from everyone else. The people who've been harmed by problem gambling, the people who've been problem gamblers themselves and their families, who went into great detail describing how problem gambling had impacted on their lives. And so if you think about who benefits from commission-based payments, it's the venue operators. Who doesn't benefit from that? And that's what's not clear to me. I don't believe there's been a relevant cost-benefit analysis of commission-based payments to venues, because surely they haven't taken into...
Order. I'm now going to ask the member to resume his seat and to remind her that we're now on to part 2 of the bill, which is a very, very narrow area, and the member and she hasn't been the only one speaking on this part, has strayed well past it. Denise Roche.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Well,
I'd like an explanation, because clause 18 specifically refers to commission-based payments. If you change over the page, part 3, subclause 3, and that's where commission-based payments are in there. So I'm referring to the submissions that we received on this aspect of the bill.
I just want to remind the member that in an earlier part we had what was a substantive discussion on that area. The main new part, the new thing in this is around the review of the Secretary's decisions. That is really the substantive part of it, and the schedule. There's quite a lot of room in the schedule, but both on the second reading and on part 1, the principle which the member is now discussing very widely has already been accepted by the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will confine my comments basically to clause 18 and to the supplementary order paper that I have in my name, which requests that my order paper says, my supplementary order paper says, if I can find it, I think it basically, it says in clause 18, delete new section 37 bracket 1 end bracket DD end bracket and DE on page 15 line 32 to page 16 line 7. And I will probably discuss this more because in the next part in the schedules, because I also have a supplementary order paper pretty much along the same lines in that one as well. Sir, I do want to know from the Minister, though, the justification for this clause for venues to receive commission payments.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I should be coaching or not from the chair, but we are actually discussing the schedule now. And if she waits till after the vote on
I'll keep going.
This bit, then she'll be too late.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I've probably said enough, and I actually want to thank you for your assistance in this matter. I appreciate the coaching.
Mr. Chair.